The ability to communicate with one's compatriots is central to the ability to resist. If you cannot communicate, you are condemned to live under the heel of those that oppress you. I'm Randall Terry. This is Voice of Resistance.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance.
Welcome to the program, friend. As Americans, we are predisposed to believe certain things, and our history bolsters those beliefs. For example, we believe in free speech. We just do. And we hear and we see a lot of stuff that we think is junk and garbage and useless and false. And some of us are angry, as we should be. Some of us shrug it off, as sometimes is appropriate. But we've just come to take for granted that we can communicate with each other. Crazy movies come out, insane documentaries, true books, books that are laced with falsehood. We have a First Amendment. Criticism of the government. At its core, freedom of speech is not simply about the ability to produce art and literature that some people find offensive and other people find inspiring. It's not just about the ability to preach the gospel. That in some ways is the highest or second highest blessing of freedom of speech. But at its core, it was like twin sisters. It was the ability to preach the gospel, to preach the truth, to not be subservient to the British crown, and to criticize the government. To boldly criticize, to boldly denounce, to boldly confront, to boldly write about. The freedom of speech in this country is woven into the very fiber, not just of our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence, but it's woven into our political DNA as humans. You and I, as Americans, have no concept of what it's like to live in Russia, or to live in China, where they don't have freedom of speech. Even England is not allowed. Their reporters are not allowed to talk about certain things that are going on in trials or with arrests, etc. All right, so what's my point in all this? My point is that we are witnessing, not in little dribs and drabs, but on wholesale levels, we are witnessing the subversion, the crushing of the freedom of speech. And hence, we are witnessing the wedding of big tech and government to big tech and government to silence opposition and to hinder the inability for us to communicate with one another. Now, some of you will remember, because you're students of history, you will remember the committees of correspondence. The founders of this republic, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, they understood that if they were going to oppose British tyranny and they were going to mount any type of resistance to the oppressions of the British crown, that they would need to be able to communicate with people from the various colonies. And the committees of correspondence, these people became legends. They became heroes in the cause. Having men ready on horseback to bolt the minute that one state legislature convened and passed some law or passed some declaration or showed their support for independence. You had riders that would ride through day and night, rain and wind. I mean, it's almost like the beginning of the post office. And it was central to America's ability to mount a resistance to the British. We are living in a moment where if I get on this program or 1,000 other TV hosts or web-based programs. Remember, my program is not web-based, so I can say stuff that's going to air on television. Thank you, God, for the Walk Network, the Walk TV network. I can say things on the air that's going to make it on air. But when our masters at Google or Facebook or Twitter and soon TikTok, when they get wind with their little algorithms of something that I've said, they'll take a show down. But more importantly, as several well-known web-based programs have shown, they will shut the show down. So when I talked about a certain medication that I took when I had COVID, when I talked about that, I didn't know I was doing anything wrong. They not only took the show down, they gave me a strike. This is your first strike. If you get 3 strikes, your website, your YouTube channel is shut down permanently. There are organizations, ministries, platforms of communication that used to reach millions of people, millions, and they're gone from YouTube, decimated. Now, each of them in their own way is trying to rebuild using various platforms. But the danger that this puts us in cannot be overstated. Now, I'm going to take a break. When I come back, I'm going to read from the Declaration of Independence. What spurred this on in me this morning was a doctor, a scientist, who used to be a vice president at Pfizer, that has been warning people about certain inoculations to COVID-19. And he made predictions early on that are now proving true. And what is the response of big tech and the government? The government's response is to deny it, and big tech's response is to suppress it. On this one point about the danger of some of these vaccines. And oh look, Johnson & Johnson has pulled theirs. Now, if a year ago or 6 months ago, you were out there criticizing Johnson & Johnson and saying there's a danger here, there's not enough testing, we don't know if this is going to cause infertility, etc., you would have been labeled a lunatic, you would have been labeled a fearmonger. But now the data is too overwhelming for them to suppress the truth, and the drug has been yanked. Got to take a break. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the program, friend. I'm going to read to you part of the Declaration of Independence, but I'm going to focus on a section that most of us don't look at, but it's really telling. Stay with me, okay? You're going to find this interesting. And the reason I'm reading it is because it sometimes really and truly applies to me. And it applies to you. Here we go. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Notice, camera back on me for a second, that governments are instituted by men for the purpose of securing our God-given rights. The government doesn't give us these rights. These rights come from God. They are unalienable. They can't be separated from us. The right to life, the right to liberty, the pursuit of happiness. I continue. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. All right? Still tracking, right? This is the heart and soul of the American Revolution against the British. We have a God-given right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when the government becomes destructive of those rights, it is our right to alter or abolish it. This is where I want to read from. Most people stop there with good understanding why they would do that, but listen to this. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. Remember Twisted Sister? We're not gonna take it. We're not gonna take it. We're not gonna take it anymore. It's a song. It's fun. It's funny. But it's not the history of the human race. The history of the human race is that people are more predisposed, we might say, to suffer. Yeah, what's going on today is really weird. Yeah, the Biden presidency. Yeah, I can see, I heard about the executive orders they're coming after some people's guns. Yeah, I heard about them shutting down various platforms where people are criticizing Biden yeah, I can't believe Biden's really letting all those illegal immigrants in. That's crazy. And you just keep going down the list of what's going on. And most of us, because as Thomas Jefferson wrote here, history has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer. Because why? Because we recognize the toll of resistance. The cost, the price. Now, in this particular historic event, this seminal moment in human history, the Declaration of Independence, the toll, the cost, was open war. Thousands and thousands dead on both sides. A new nation being born, formed out of the revolution of the 13 colonies against the British Crown. In other situations, it's not quite that dramatic. This one was dramatic. But the truth of the matter is that only a third of the colonists wanted independence. A third wanted to remain loyal. Another third were kind of in the middle. That's the best polling data that exists from that era. So it was a minority, intellectually, that wanted to break with the British Crown. And it was a fraction of that minority that took up arms, that were involved in the committees of correspondence, smuggling information, data, through enemy lines. I believe it was Samuel Adams who said, "You do not need a majority to prevail. You need an irate, tireless minority keen to set fires in the minds of men." And that's what they had. We don't have much of that today. And the tragedy and the terrifying part is this. When we do get an agitated, tireless minority, big tech and government shut them down. I've got to take a break. Reach back into your memory and think of a definition of fascism. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the program, friend. If you look up the word fascism online right now, the definitions are all over the map. And sadly, the definition or the use of the word has been captured by left-wingers to denounce right-wingers. But at its origin, fascism basically meant the wedding of big totalitarian government, at least partly totalitarian, and big business. The wedding of big government and big business. That's what we see in America right now. Hello? The wedding of big government and big business. The oppression of individuals in many ways was an afterthought. It was the fruit. But we are living in and under, in many aspects, a fascist system. Big government and big business. Suppression of individual rights. Silencing of dissident voices. Now, as of this moment, these dissident voices aren't sent to a concentration camp or aren't sent to a re-education school or they're not sent to the gulags. Give it time. It's possible. When we were off the air, one of the people on our team said, when do we fight? When do we stand up? This comes from the lips of a younger person. Courage is like a muscle. Courage is like a muscle. You use it and it gets stronger. So Jeremiah wrote, he said, if you've run with footmen and grown weary, how can you run against horses? Meaning, if you can't fight on a little matter, how do you think you're going to fight on a big matter? So the pattern of indifference, the pattern of turning our eyes the other way, the pattern of not fighting is what enables bad guys to stay in power, and it's what propels us down a path of non-confrontation. Now, we live in America. So when we say, we're going to fight, we're going to go to battle, we're going to be in this war of righteousness, we're in the culture wars. When we say these things, we are often using imagery and vocabulary from the military. We don't mean picking up guns and shooting. We mean, in fact, politics is war by another name. The very word campaign, a political campaign, the word campaign was a military term. So the simplest place to begin is to use the political process to wage war and to use our voices, meaning speech, pen, typewriter, to publicly state, this is good, this is evil, this is right, this is wrong. So, for example, take this insane, truly demonic, and I mean that, truly demonic, trans thing that's going on. Marvel and DC and all these people saying they're going to introduce trans heroes. Okay, so do you want to show what you're made of? Use your voice in whatever format that you have, outside of your ghetto, none in your little church pew, outside of your ghetto. Use your voice to say, this is evil, this is wrong, this is literally paving the way for genital mutilation of children. This is pagan, this is demonic. Show your mettle. A man, a woman is known by the enemies they keep. Show me your scars in battle, and then I'll know that you have the right enemies. Then I'll know that you stood for what was true. That's how and when you stand. I've got to take a break. Please don't go away. The ability to make waves, or the refusal to make waves. At the core of today's discussion is, will you speak the truth as we understand it, even when we are met with hostility, even when we are met with disinformation? even when we lose friends, maybe even a job. As a student of history, I constantly try and bring things into focus, into relief. I've been to jail a lot of times, a lot. I've spent over a year of my life locked up in various jails, prisons, once even house arrests. When I think of the difficulties that I have endured, rather than boo-hoo, I think I'm not in China, lying in my own feces and urine. I'm not in Russia, in a gulag in Siberia. I keep perspective. So I beg you, as you assess the horizon and the evils and the battles, have perspective. We have not yet resisted sin to the shedding of our blood, as the book of Hebrews says. God calls us to stand for truth and justice, to leave the results to Him, but He calls us to fight people. We are the church militant. God bless you.